I don't know if you've heard of RE. It's a taxpayer-funded online news and current affairs platform hosted by our state broadcaster TVNZ, focusing on content for young people. It covers topics such as LGBTQIA+, the planet, health and bodies, amongst others. There's also some charming videos and articles such as how does someone think eating is hot, or how to watch porn ethically, or my girlfriend is on antidepressants and I can't make her. Yes, charming. Now these are supposed to be informing our young people, and this quickly gives you an indication of their distorted moral worldview and why you need to demand your taxpayer funding back. Remember, you're paying for this stuff via TVNZ, the state broadcaster. But my concern is that the government is using state-funded media to soften us up for what's coming next in radical sexuality and gender education. Now, just some background. We've previously talked about the Relationships and Sexuality Education Guidelines, or RSE for short. It's a new set of proposals produced by the Ministry of Education, released in September 2020. And despite being well-intentioned, these proposals are for the most part ideological. And while their content is portrayed as scientific, they actually have no basis in science. And this should be concerning to all parents and caregivers. It's primarily about indoctrinating our children with confusing and harmful gender ideology, preferred name and pronouns, accessing toilets and changing rooms that align with the gender choice, challenging sex norms. For example, the assumption apparently that sex characteristics at birth are always male or female. Apparently that's just an assumption. And challenging homophobia, transphobia, sexism, gender binaries, and the ongoing effects of colonisation. Now, the author of that paper is from Auckland University and is featured in this TVNZ RE article, which we saw and alerted us to a lot more that's coming. She suggests a lot is included in our RSE classes. Well, too much actually that parents don't want already and teachers don't want to be bothered with. But one thing that's not in yet, according to this academic, is the pleasure of sex. And her observation is that schools sometimes shy away from making pleasure part of the curriculum out of a fear that parents will react, or a fear that they might encourage young people to have more sex. Now, in the article, a family planning senior health promoter says, "We need to acknowledge the role that pleasure and enjoyment plays in people's decision to be intimate. Without pleasure, relationships and sexuality education is at risk of being reductionist, heteronormative, medicalised, and focused on risk avoidance." So, if you're alarmed at the liberal gender ideologies being taught or recommended by academic activists via the Ministry of Education in your child or grandchild's classroom, buckle up. There's more coming. And this is what TVNZ's RE article indicates. It's called The Pleasure Project. The Pleasure Project is an international not-for-profit on a mission to get sex educators hooked on talking dirty and embrace desire, joy, happiness and pleasure in sex education. We can have safer sex if we know how to have good sex. The Pleasure Project wants to provide sex education with the emphasis on sex, not education. Now, a closer look at their website shows a direct link between their education programs and sites that are pornographic in nature and material. Let's have a look at some of the material, and please note, this is not suitable for younger viewers. And look, there's some irony that I am having to say that, given that they want this in the curriculum for your children. They had a special month last year, even with an accompanying playlist on Spotify. In one of their descriptions or exercises, it's my most pleasurable sexual experience. Who were you with? Yourself? Your partner? A stranger? Was the experience part of something else? Honeymoon? Well, there's one positive in the curriculum, but then holiday fling. And what happened? Here's another one. Women have pleasurable sex when, well, I can't actually read some of these, but you can see them. Let me highlight a few. And remember that this is what they want to teach and discuss in schools to your children. and other explicit material which we don't think you will want your children seeing. So here's a question. If our children are being taught about sex from the age of 5, what age will schools introduce the concept of pleasure? And how will that be taught? And where do parents and values fit into all of this? Do we even have a say? Ironically, the website talks about the pleasure principles, which aim to help inspire and guide you as a pleasure activist, propagandist, or practitioner. Activist or propagandist. We couldn't have described it better. What's concerning is that nowhere in the Relationships and Sexuality Education Guidelines, or the Pleasure Project, or other new school initiatives are the teaching of the benefits of abstinence, delay, and marriage, or teaching on the benefits of commitment, intimacy, love, or consequences, or as I said, parental supervision or family values or religious expression. In fact, in the article, the Auckland University academic argues that young people are tired of schools giving them a curriculum that is disconnected to the realities of their lives or only focused on risk. Yeah, those darn consequences. And of course, you know, to say only focused on risk. Yeah, right. Look at the material. It's not about risk. It's about experimentation. Family Planning said, when sexuality education focuses only on heterosexual couples and avoiding pregnancy and STIs, it emphasises male pleasure that centres around erections and ejaculation. Yes, apparently heterosexuality is sexism at its worst. Now, of course, pleasure matters. I mean, God designed sex. Sex is awesome, but there's far more to the package. Commitment, respect, marriage, love, monogamy, faithfulness, a biblical sexual morality. And it seems that schools that utilise these programs, indoctrinating our young children with gender ideology and sexual pleasure, are simply putting pressure on our children to embrace sexuality, sex and relationships far too early, and in a way that most parents would object to, which is why they work so hard to hide it from you. Now, you may be thinking right now, well, at least this material isn't in our schools yet. Let me warn you that what is already in schools should concern you. One quick example. In the Keeping Ourselves Safe program, run under the banner of the New Zealand Police, and much of that program is very good. But a parent alerted us to this material in the program. And unfortunately, gender ideology and indoctrination are rife in most of these sexuality type programs. Here's what it says. Teachers should not make assumptions about children's gender identity. They should also be mindful that students, parents, siblings, friends and family members may identify as gender diverse or be same or both sex attracted. Use inclusive language so all children feel that the conversation is relevant to themselves, their bodies and their families and whānau. Some phrases you could use are, some children have a penis, some children have a vulva vagina, rather than boys have a penis, girls have a vulva vagina. Use genitals rather than penis vagina when the type of genital is unknown. Don't assume that a male presenting child will have a penis. Parents, whānau or caregivers, rather than the terms mum and dad. So, parents, be vigilant. Be actively involved in what your child's school is teaching in this area. And how can you do that? Well, we also have this important guide for parents, Responding to the Transgender Issue, Parent Resource Guide, which gives great advice in this area about what is being taught, your legal rights, and how you can engage with the school in a respectful but effective manner. And of course, the analysis of the recently released Relationships and Sexuality Education Guidelines. Here's your strategy. Contact your child's school and ask what content their classes will be covering. Be proactive. Closely monitor the classroom material. Be aware of what your child is learning and what homework assignments they may be asked to complete. Liaise with the school's Board of Trustees to let them know respectfully if and why you are concerned. Ask your children what they are learning about gender, sex and relationships. And if all else fails, don't forget you can withdraw your child from specific classes. The good news is that most schools are rejecting this extreme material, and many teachers don't want anything to do with it. But we can get ahead of the conversation in teaching at school by creating an open culture of conversation at home. As a parent or caregiver, it's our job to be a voice they trust the most on the topic of relationships and sex. Let's be courageous and talk about sex and relationships and marriage and abstinence with our children. You don't need to have all the answers, but just be open to all the questions. Explore answers together and be the loudest voice on this topic. Let's not leave the door open for our children to be taught about sex and relationships by voices of people whose agendas and values don't align with ours. Go to our website familyfirstnz and click on Research and Issues to see a number of resources which will help you as a parent.